Hi, everybody. Welcome to Healthcare Leadership Live. This is Mike Lyons. I'm the host of the show, and I am here with my guest, Guido Piquet, and I'm super excited to chat with him today. We're going to have a fun show here because Guido is actually on the move. He is one of these jet setting guys that is so in demand that he's at the airport all the time and he's traveling. So Guido, thanks for joining us here from the airport.
Yeah.
We're on to your next engagement.
Oh, absolutely. I appreciate you having me on. And, sorry I had to cancel on you the first time. And so this trip came up after I committed to you. So I was like, you know what? I'm just going to make it work. Here we go. We got a intercom going over. So hopefully it's not too bad.
Yeah, absolutely. So, thanks for being our live reporter there at the Houston airport. If any breaking news should take place there at the airport,
Yeah.
we want to know what's going on.
Any
Um,
celebrities pop by,
any,
I'll bring them in.
that's right. Well, I wanted to have you on because, you're a leader in the ophthalmology world. And, I love talking ophthalmology. You've got a really interesting background. And, if at any time during the airport engagement here you can't hear me, I'm happy to repeat.
I can hear you.
Okay, good. So anyway, let's maybe start kind of from the beginning here. So for those of you that don't know Guido, he's the chief operating officer for Man Eye Institute, which is a multi-specialty eye care practice in Texas. And I just looking at your website, it doesn't look like there's anything in eye care that you don't do, but maybe you can illuminate that for me.
Yeah.
But yeah, maybe give us a very high level of your practice, and then how did you get to this point in your career?
Sure. So funny enough, today is actually my 19th anniversary today, September
Congrats.
25th. I started back in 2006. And when I started with the practice at that time, we were, I believe, like 5 or 6 locations and maybe 10, 15 providers. And LASIK surgeries were just bombarding us and running into the door and begging us to do LASIK on them. And it was definitely a different time back then. And since, I've been with the practice now, like I said, 19 years. We've grown it to close to 50 providers, and we're 16 locations. And we've also, during that time, when I started, we had one ASC. Now we have three ASCs in the Houston market, and then we have an OBS in the Austin market, which has been an awesome adventure, and continue to grow and look for opportunities to add to the practice. Kind of what you said in terms of, what do you not do? As we've seen in this LASIK market that is not as hefty as we'd like, that being diversified really helps. And so we a few years ago added, actually it's been probably 5 years, added our first retina provider, brought on another one, and we have another one starting in January. So we're trying to grow that because that's definitely a need, and for our patients and just for the market. Even though there's a lot of retina docs, it's hard to get patient access as quickly as we'd like. So we're trying to help diversify. We brought in oculoplastics, and we just recently started to work on creating a fellowship program with Dr. Bita Ismaili. She's an oculoplastic oncologist at MD Anderson, and where she's a world-renowned physician. And so we're really hoping with her expertise and just name recognition, that we can start a fellowship program, bring in more providers, and just attract more people to the market. Obviously, we're I think like everyone else in ophthalmology, we're doing really well with cataract surgery and cataract growth, which is been a blessing, and especially these last couple of years when elective surgeries have taken a very large percentage dip.
Hmm.
We continue to grow and innovate when it comes to how we see patients, customer experience, patient engagement platforms, everything like that. We're always trying to be the first, the best, and the greatest. Sometimes that's a blessing, sometimes it's a curse. And you know, I think what we usually try to do is we try to keep up with Mike Mann, who founded the practice. It's usually what I tell people is whenever I'm with him and he's talking about this brand new idea we're going to do. I say, we just try to keep up with him and make sure that whatever he tells us we're going to do, we make it work. And so it's
Mm.
been cool. And also for my journey specifically, I did, when I came into the practice, I came in a different capacity. I was an IT guy. So I came in as an IT guy. So that tells you that there's opportunity in ophthalmology if you really can kind of dive in and show your desire to learn and be innovative and do new things. So that for the first 5 years of the practice, I was the IT guy, and then they was like, "Hey, take your hand at doing operating or managing a clinic." I was like, "Yeah, that's awesome," and did really well, grew really fast, and then they helped me continue to grow, and now I'm managing the entire operation for the practice, which I feel blessed to do, and it's been a really fun ride.
Yeah, and I wanted to kind of to touch on that because to make the jump from IT really it's not an area of any business that I've been part of where you normally see people jump into operations leadership and senior leadership. I've worked with a lot of awesome IT folks, but it hasn't been that path. And so what do you think it was? What do you think it was that made it possible for you? And then I don't know, what is it about you that you think helped you get identified for that type of a role?
Well, I'd probably say I'm not the typical IT guy in that sense. Like the
Yeah.
stereotypical Saturday Night Live, like move. That's not me. So I think from a personality standpoint, I've always been a little bit different and a little bit more just not afraid to speak up and have transparent conversations. So that I think that really helped just
Mm,
because a lot of what makes us successful is our ability to communicate. And that goes for ophthalmology in any industry. And so I think right off the bat, I had a little practice, and then just was more inclined to be one of those communicators in the practice. And then I think what also helped me is because I came from a technical background, I had another skill set that helped me be successful when it came to implementing other operational
mm,
ideas and projects. Because whenever people would try to explain what it is that they're try and sell us or whatever, they couldn't pull the wool over my eyes because I could talk the talk of what makes those things work. So I think because I quickly came to the table with that perspective of what makes things work, and then was doing okay when it came to communicating those ideas. I was able to quickly kind of grow and in my roles from a leadership perspective, and and when I took on my first clinic, it was 100% my ability to connect and communicate that
mm.
helped me survive. Because when they asked me to jump in, I was like, sure, but you're going to have to help me out. And let's just say I didn't get as much guidance as we had hoped. So I really had to trial by fire. And I even told the staff during the first meeting, I was like, hey, look, I know a few things. I don't know a ton of things about what it takes to manage this practice. I'm going to be honest with you. However, what I am going to bring is the ability to help you grow and
Mm,
and be there to support you. And so being honest and transparent up front, I think
mm,
really gave me the opportunity to make a connection with them. Because then at that point, then instead of saying this is a guy who doesn't know how to come lead us, they were like, okay, well, this is a guy who has a skill who's going to actually help lift us in a different way. And then throughout that journey, they were very open of putting me into the fire and helping me learn the business of ophthalmology from the inside out. They would dump me in the visual field room. They would dump me in the maps room, and I was doing all that stuff on a daily basis, working on the LASIK team, working at the front desk, doing post ops on Saturdays with the team, doing the congratulatory stuff. So really
Oh, looks like we lost the feed there for Guido. I think he'll be back here in a second. But what I wanted to say about what he was just saying is that when you are when you're new as a leader, what he was demonstrating there, and you were demonstrating honesty. You talked about honesty and transparency, but what the word that flashed in my mind when you were talking about that was humility. It's like when a leader shows, hey, I don't know how to do this, but I'm willing to learn, and I'm willing to do front desk, or I'm willing to learn how to do a visual field. I'm not afraid to do that, and I'm humble enough to do something that I don't know how to do. That's a very endearing quality, and it's a trust building quality. And I think Stanley McChrystal talked about that in Team of Teams, if I remember correctly. And I think the Culture Code is another book where we talk about humility of the leader. So you really demonstrated that early on, it sounds like.
Yeah, it was fun, and I can't say that I went in planning to do that. That I really didn't have a choice. I had to figure out what strategy was going to help me, to make a connection with these people, because there was a lot of hesitation when I stepped into the role. Like, why the hell are they bringing the IT guy in here
Yeah.
to help us out? And I had to hit that head on pretty quickly, and I think that authenticity really helped to just connect and get a lot further than I would have otherwise.
Yeah, I think authenticity, humility, those are really important. I think that's kind of one huge takeaway from that is for a leader who is looking to grow, be willing to admit what you don't know, be willing to admit your mistakes, and that will immediately, make people trust you. And I think there's even been studies that showed people who ask more questions seem more intelligent, right? They seem more capable and they seem more confident. So being willing to ask questions. And
Yeah.
actually, on that point, I do want to say for anyone watching live right now on LinkedIn or YouTube, you can make a comment, you can share a thought with Guido or a question with Guido, and we can answer that and address that live right here on the live stream. Um, but believe me, we have a few other topics we're going to get into. But if you have a question, please throw that our way. Um, if you like Guido's jacket, you want to say, "Hey, Guido, man, looking sharp today." Uh, you can
My
do that
travel
as well.
jacket.
Yeah, or even just say hi. Um, I'm curious. Obviously you had that. It sounds like you had an aptitude from the get go. You had that humility, the desire. But I'm sure that you have grown yourself, and with some intentionality, and maybe some people helped you grow, or maybe just some things like came into your world that helped you to move forward in your career there. What would be one of those one or two things that you might say like really helped you to move forward?
It's I'd say it's related to what we talked about when I first started. It's being really authentic and admitting what you don't know, and then getting people that are have maybe a different skill or maybe more time in the industry to get them talking about those things. I'm very forward, like when I go to a conference or have a reference call, or if somebody calls me about asking people what makes them successful, or admitting that, hey, I'm struggling in this area. I think that there's a pandemic of people not wanting to admit they don't know something because they think that's a sign of weakness, when I actually think it's a sign of strength. And
Mm,
if you because you sometimes you go to some of these meetings, and everybody's got their chest puffed out, and hey, yeah, we're doing this and we're doing that, and we're amazing and this and that and the other. I don't really like to talk about how amazing we are. I like to talk about our struggles. Like, hey, we're
mm,
struggling with this. Like,
yeah.
what did you guys do? Have you had this struggle? And the thing about our industry is that we all have the same struggle.
Mm,
And so somebody may have experienced that before, and they're likely open if you give them the opportunity to do that. And I wasn't huge on networking and going to the different conferences like ASOA and that before. But when I started going,
Mm.
I really started to find people that were willing to kind of help give me some just pearls and figure out how to take it to the next level. And, I think I've said this before in other podcasts, but even from the early days of my career before I started, when I was the IT guy working at the Best Buy Geek Squad front desk, ever since then, I was the amoeba. I call myself amoeba because I'll get close to people and then start asking them questions, suck up
Mm.
their knowledge, and then I just keep going and I just keep growing because people are willing to share usually, and I'm not afraid to ask questions.
Yeah, being unafraid to ask questions is huge, and I love what you said um, about being open about where you're struggling and telling people, "Hey, this is what we're trying to work on." Because that's how you learn. That's how you learn in life is by learning from other people. And so, the more you can keep your ears open, the better off you're going to be. And yeah, you talked about networking. I just had a I recorded a show recently about the power of networking is so huge. And I think when we're in that daily grind, we forget to do that. We don't make time for that. And then years go by and we look back and we really haven't built that supportive network. But those are the people you learn from, I think. Sounds like the airport has got some activity there. What any news to report on, Guido, there from the airport?
Man, it amazes me how empty it is right now, but how active the intercom is. That's
The intercom to activity ratio is off the
yeah,
charts right now. There's a
yeah.
lot of information. I'm curious about, you have almost 50 providers, a lot of
Mhm,
MDs and a lot of optometrists. And we were talking before that y'all have really good name recognition and Texas is a great place to be. I'm curious if and sometimes it's hard to find those MDs, right? And so sometimes
mhm.
you kind of, well, the pickings are slim, but when you get an opportunity to evaluate a potential provider, are there things that like might be a deal breaker for you, or maybe things that y'all try to look for to when you're integrating a new, clinician into the
Yeah.
office?
You know, I, I think every practice has had struggles, and some have made good decisions. And as far as bringing in certain providers or staff, and sometimes it's not, you didn't make the right decision. I think some of the things you learn is that you have to make sure that the person you're bringing in is a cultural fit
Mm,
for the organization. And usually, the way to best ascertain that is to have that provider talk and meet closely with either the physician board or the executive team or whatever that is, so that there can be a very clear understanding of, how many patients does a provider typically see? How hard do we work? Do we work 5 days a week? Or there's that's more common now too. People are asking for alternate
mm,
schedules where they're not working 5 days a week. So I think that one of the most important things is to make sure that it's everything is kind of talked about up front, and there
mm,
and there is some sort of agreement on those very key things. What are the things that you expect us to provide you? What kind of culture is it? What do you expect to provide to the organization? And make sure that it's a good fit, because we there's this some of the providers tell me that, as an MD, you never keep your first job. Like you end
mm,
up, all the MDs will go somewhere and then figure out who they are and what they want, and then go find a practice that aligns and matches with those skills. So we keep we keep that in mind when it comes to recruiting and making sure that it's a fit. Just because it's very costly to recruit and time consuming, and if you jump into it too quickly, and it can come back and bite you. And I'm not going to say that we've done it perfectly every time, and we learn. I think from the practice side, I think what some of the hard lessons we've learned over the years is making sure that we have a really solid onboarding program for
mm.
providers. Because you got there's so many things and so many boxes to tick. If you don't have some kind of system to do that, and you're like, oh yeah, I know kind of essentially I need to do this, we need to start credentialing, we need to do this, we need to figure out their equipment needs, we need to figure out their schedule. As you start talking and thinking about it, that list becomes really long, and
Mm,
part of that list is actually integrating them into the practice right away, having welcome lunches, and having you know having them at the doctor meeting and a dinner, and announcing them, and trying to get them integrated and feeling part of the practice as soon as possible,
mm,
because a lot of times people they make an impression of what that practice life and culture is going to be very quickly, and
mm,
so we need to jump quickly to make sure that we're presenting our best foot, because there has been a case where we didn't necessarily put our best foot forward right away, and then some of the feedback was, well, it feels a little chaotic,
mm.
right? And we learn from that, and try to make it to where it's really turnkey when providers come in. Everything is done. Like we're like we even go as far as creating a schedule, of not just their patient schedule, but okay, here's what your first month is going to look like. On this day, you're going to have EMR training from this time to this time. At this time, you're going to go get your headshot done. At this time, you're going to go have a lunch with the other providers. At this time, you're going to go meet some of our external ODs who refer to us. So I
Mm.
think being very intentional, and showing that when you're talking to the providers really kind of helps, because they're like, wow, these people have their stuff together. And then that transition is going to be not as painful as it could be.
Yeah. That's amazing, and I'm sure that all of that probably puts you in the top 1% probably of practices by following that type of structure. I'm
Mhm.
curious about, because I know when I've been a part of a large practice before, it was important for me to connect with new providers and talk about HR, talk about the importance of people and how we hire, and um, our method of finding folks so that we can provide the best staff for those providers, and wanted them to have an understanding of all of that stuff, and also kind of impart to those doctors, hey, you're part of the leadership here. Like, the way you communicate and carry yourself is going to have a big factor on the employee experience, which is going to
Mhm.
it's going to directly influence your outcomes. What's your take on, the clinician, the provider, and the role that they have within the clinic as part of leadership?
I think they have a larger role sometimes than the management and the leadership team, because they set the tone for that clinic. They set the tone of culture. And so one thing I didn't mention as far as the onboarding plan is all our new providers, when they come in, we have a rolling orientation where our human resources team will onboard employees, and it's a full day, and sometimes a couple of days where we bring them in. We try to have we set them up for success from the beginning, and we talk about our culture. We talk about all the things that they should expect when they get to their home clinic. We have providers join those as well. So we'll have
Mm,
providers alongside front desk, alongside technicians that attend those orientations. And I think what it helps to do is give that provider the ability to kind of see from the beginning, like this practice is setting the tone for not just me as the provider, but for the front desk and every role in this clinic, and I'm part of it. And I think that the staff really appreciate it when the providers are in on the orientation with them. A lot of times they're surprised to meet each other, like, hi, how are you? They're introducing each other. Hi, I'm such and such. Or sometimes a lot of times they don't introduce themselves as a doctor. They'll say, hi, I'm John, and then they find out they're one of the providers, and they're like, oh wow, you're one of the doctors. And so I think that integration from the beginning really
mm,
helps to set the tone for the provider and the staff, that yeah, this is not a joke. Like when we talk about integrating people into the culture of what BNI means, it's not about that poster board on the wall. It's about what the things that we say and the things that we do. That is what creates that culture. And so we try to set that tone early on. And I think it does a really good job of giving the provider and the staff a good picture of that.
yeah, that onboarding, as you described, is such a great moment for everybody coming into the business, and having the providers join that is amazing. I've just seen staff really connect with each other during those kinds of experiences, and that's pretty unique that y'all are doing that. I actually haven't heard that. So that's amazing. That's
Yeah.
amazing, and they really are so important to the leadership team. As you said, they often are more important because the staff are talking to them every day, and they're learning from the providers. There's a lot of times the doctors, the ODs, they'll teach the staff, they'll help them grow. So I've seen that be really important. Um, I'm curious about your company, your clinic has so many locations, and that has to be a huge challenge to manage. What is maybe one or two things that you think are key to helping you as the chief operating officer keep your hands into all that and ensure quality and good communication across so many different locations? Sounds like they're communicating there at the airport. Maybe you should incorporate an intercom system,
Yeah,
at your
yeah.
offices.
I think people would probably run for the hills. Uh, so a couple of things. I'll give you and actually, I'm glad that I was able to kind of give you something you hadn't heard before. And whenever you and I had talked back on the podcast I was doing, you gave me an idea, which I'm actually we're working on, and we're going to do it
Okay.
here in the next couple of weeks. So the problem with, like you said, you get so big. How do you ensure quality? How do you ensure that the way that you expect patients to be handled and treated and protocols to be done continues consistently? I'm not going to say that it's perfect all the time, because it's not. But the first thing I'd say I try to do is I try as much as possible to replicate myself in my team.
Hmm.
So what I'm doing is, so we have a group of regional clinic managers, and each of those regional clinic managers are responsible for 2 to 3 to 4 locations each, and then we work together as a team. And those regional clinic managers, what my goal is to try to instill all the same things that I would say I would do, or at least from a thought process perspective, and then combine that with their personality, their great ideas. But it's instilling the culture in them, so that I don't have to go to every single clinic and try to do that myself, because I can't do that. It's just not physically possible. I do set a time. I've recently set aside Thursdays for a travel day for me. So I've been using that as a time to get around, to get some face
Nice.
time with the clinic, because it was really hard, or it's been really hard to connect, especially when I go up to people and they don't know who I am. I don't know who they are. When you get that big, it's just really hard to do that. So that's really helped. But I think just growing that team has has really helped, and we are such a close management team. And what I do is try to give them what the culture through example. So the humility, the authenticity. There was an example last week where one of them in our group chat, one of them asked the question, like, "Do you have one of these? Does anyone have this piece of equipment?" And I'd never heard of it, and I'm like, "What the hell is that?" And then they all started laughing, like, that of course Guido would admit he doesn't know what that is. And so by giving that example of that, it just really helps to get a team that's just willing to do whatever it is it takes for the organization. So then they hang on a second. Somebody literally just came behind me and like turned on this loud music. So now it's
Uh, you know what? I
so
didn't hear it, but that's part of the fun of
yeah.
the
So
on location.
so that's one thing. And the other thing was the idea that you had given me, which was communication. And
Mm.
and so communicating with the practice. Hang on a second, Mike. This is driving me bonkers. I'm gonna walk.
Okay. Guido's on the move, everybody. When you're
So,
live, you've got to go
okay,
where the action is
y'all
at.
right. Okay, hold on a second. Look at that.
We're moving. We're dancing here at the
Y'all are
airport,
live,
and
ladies, on a podcast too.
you're
Y'all can
live.
dance. Keep dancing. Keep dancing.
Keep on,
Yeah.
dude. They're going.
Yeah, you're live. This is a podcast, so y'all are doing a good job. No, not Facebook. Thank you, ladies.
Fun and excitement always follows Guido
Man,
wherever
that's
he
crazy.
goes. If you know
That's
him, he's the guy that, he just attracts energy, as you can tell.
Mike. I'm sure this is the first for you on your show.
It's a total first, but I might have to continue this.
Okay, so let me
Um,
finish my second point because I think it was an important one. So that when you and I did the podcast last, we were talking about how to get the word out. So we have a newsletter. We call it the Man I Minute podcast, or sorry, the Man I Minute newsletter. So what we're doing is we're creating a podcast edition of the newsletter because the way that people ingest information, it can be tough, right? Like,
yeah.
because you send out information, you email information out, and people don't read it. And so as you get bigger, if people don't feel like they're informed, they feel disconnected. And then they start filling in the blanks with their own story, right?
Mm,
It's just, unfortunately, especially like I'll use an example. So if we're investing in a new piece of equipment, some employees might think, well, why would they do that whenever, elective surgeries are down? But it's a strategic decision because we know that by positioning ourselves with this piece of equipment, it's going to help us to really continue to lead the way and attract more business. So it's a strategic move. But in order to get that word out, putting it in a newsletter, that's just not going to work, right? So we're actually going to record the Man I Minute podcast edition, which is where I'm going to interview the CEO and one of our owner positions, and they're going to just give us some updates on some things that the people
mm,
want to know. And we're getting some of the topics because we have an employee action committee with different employees from different parts of the organization come together. I think it's quarterly, and they're the voice of the employee. And then they're, hey, we want to know this. We'd like to know this. Are there going to be bonuses this year? Are there going to be, what's our financial situation? And so we just are trying to be transparent about where we are because obviously, as I've talked about throughout this entire live stream, authenticity and just being real is important to us, and that's our culture because we see it as a form of respect. So I'm gonna in October 1st, in a couple of weeks, I'm gonna interview the CEO in a podcast, and then we're gonna try to make it like a 10-minute.
yeah.
We'll see how it goes, and then we might edit it and chop it up to make it a little bit more ingestible, and then we're gonna publish that, and then do a quarterly podcast to kind of look at the past quarter to see what was our performance and just talk about some of the things that were done well, not too well, and then look forward at the next quarter. What are some of our goals and that kind of thing. So I'll let you know how it goes.
Yeah. Well, I would love to hear that because that's not something that a lot of people are doing. But, we talk about, and I talk about in my leadership training, that so much of our communication is nonverbal, right? And so when you send an email out, all you're getting are the words. You're not getting the voice tone. You're not getting the expression. And to be able to hear from the doctors, from the COO, and even from the staff, and hear the authenticity, the expressiveness in your voice about, hey, this is why we're doing this, and this is where we're headed, and this is why I'm excited, right? And like, what a powerful way to connect with your team. And so I have every confidence that that is going to be amazing. And so I look forward to hearing about that.
Yeah.
And shoot, maybe we can co-present on that topic at a conference and about how successful that was.
I think that's a great idea because it's just we live in the age of TikTok and Instagram and hard to keep attention. It just is what it is. It's just
Yeah,
information comes flying at us, and if we can make something of this, I think that'd be really fun to do.
yeah. Well, I have one more topic to bring up,
Yeah.
and that is, looking at y'all's website. You've been a top workplace for many years, and I'm an HR guy. I'm a huge fan of staff engagement, creating culture. I can tell culture is a big thing for you too. What do you think is it about Man Eye that has enabled you to get those accolades so consistently? Is it the Guido Piquet magic alone?
Well, what it is, I mean, so most of the leadership team has been with the practice for many years. And
Mm,
so if we are just, as you can tell, we're just kind of down home, real people. That's just that's just who we are. So I think people create culture the way that the way that we intentionally say that we want to do that. But in doing that, we just it just it grows. It's infectious.
mm,
And whenever you work for an organization where you have a very strong leadership team, you have great doctors, it's really hard to put your finger on it. It's kind of like the strategy that I gave that when I came into my first role as a clinic manager. Part of it what I said was, I don't know what the hell I'm doing, number one. Number two, uh, you know, we're going to grow this practice. We're going to grow it. And the best way for me to encompass that growth is when the patients come in, they're going to have the very best experience possible. And then I said, and how are we going to define that? How are the patients going to have the very best experience possible? And it's pissing me off. I'm going to go outside. Hold on. So how are we going to give that experience? What I told them is, in order for the patient to have an experience which is second to none, it has to be you. So you have to feel like you want to do it. Can you hear me?
yeah,
Hear me
you've
okay?
come back live with us here. Yep.
Okay. So at the end of the day, what I, having the staff have the best experience possible is, it's all about how those employees feel. So that's what I told them. My job is to help you guys make you feel like this is a place you want to be. And
Yeah.
if you feel like this is a place you want to be, then you're going to give the best experience possible to the patient. And we're going to grow this practice, because when patients have a great experience, they tell their family, they tell their friends, and then we just grow organically. So, and that has been the strategy. It's not rocket science. I think it can be harder to do, because when you look under the hood, there's sometimes a lot of things that go into making that happen. But in order to your initial question was, how are you continually winning best workplaces? It's really that, let's take care of as much as we can, and we're not going to be perfect, and we're going to admit that we're not going to be perfect, of our people. Let's get feedback from them. Let's continually grow and be better, so that when they feel good, they'll give a great experience, and then we'll grow the clinic.
Well, obviously that is paying off. I love what you said about the managers. We've heard, anyone that has studied leadership knows that employees leave because of managers many times. The manager makes a huge difference, and so talking about that retention, that management retention that you have, is huge. Retaining managers, selecting the right managers. It sounds like y'all have crushed that. And you also talked about setting a vision, having a vision for what this office is going to be about. It sounds like you created a very clear and robust vision, and people get behind that. And so that's amazing. I think that's a great place to wrap up our chat here, Guido.
Are you tired of having cutouts and intercoms?
No, actually, I'm out of topics. I can't. I've got nothing left here. I want to end on a high note, also, and
Yeah.
you had so many great nuggets here, and not the least of which was the mid podcast dance party, but the leadership nuggets.
Yeah.
Talking about the podcast, communication is so key. Like, I think a lot of people really could learn from this information, and And I want to just plug your show here because it's a great show, not just the one that I was on, but the
Mhm.
other ones are also pretty good too.
Yeah,
But what what is the name of your show, Guido, if other people want to learn from you and the guests that you
sure.
have on?
So I also jumped into the podcast space a few years ago. It's called the Ophthalmology Experience, and I called it that because what we do feels like a different experience every day. So it just felt like natural to call it an experience, and and it was really born out of kind of what we talked about earlier in terms of connecting with people and learning. So I did it selfishly. So all the guests that come on, I want to learn something from them,
Yeah.
and I want other people to learn something from them as well, and to help kind of further that networking and the connection in our industry. So it's the ophthalmology experience. We're in season 2 right now. We're releasing episodes. I'll probably have another one coming out tomorrow, and Mike was on the one of the last shows of the previous season, so that's where I got the idea to do the podcast internally. But it's been really fun, and if I would definitely suggest if anybody wants to be a guest, please find me on LinkedIn and shoot me a message. And even if you don't feel like you have a ton to share, I would love to kind of brainstorm ideas of maybe getting a panel of people together and asking questions and just sharing information and ideas, and just try to help each other out.
Well, I highly endorse reaching out to Guido and getting to know him or being on his show or learning how he weaves his magical web there at Man Eye. But Guido, thank you so much. I truly enjoyed it, and I do this show for the same reasons that you do. It's to learn and to share knowledge with others, and I think we have 100%, 110% achieved that goal here today. So thanks for
Yeah,
making time. I know you're
awesome.
busy, and it
No,
was
it's all good.
wonderful. Yeah, but so thank you so much. And thank you to everyone that's watching or that is listening to this on audio. I truly appreciate you. Please follow the show. Makes a big difference for me and for the guests. And we're excited to keep bringing you this information here on Healthcare Leadership Live. So go out there and lead with confidence.
Thanks, Mike.
Yep. And I'm going to go ahead and end